Hello everyone, welcome to the second video of the Wild Swans at School. You must have watched the first part of the Wild Swans at School by W.B. Yeats. In this video, I am going to explain the two stanzas, the next two stanzas, stanzas 3 and 4, and in the subsequent videos, you will find the explanation, the critical appreciation, along with the literary devices that have been used in the poem. Do stay tuned to this channel, One Stop All Poetry Solution, for further updates. And without much ado, let's start with the rest of the two stanzas. I have looked upon those brilliant creatures, and now my heart is sore. All's changed since I, hearing at twilight the first time on this shore, the bell beat of their wings above my head, trod with a lighter tread. So here the poet, as he is speaking through the speaker in the poem, the speaker in the poem does not represent the poet himself. He is dramatic. The speaker is dramatic and not biographical. So the speaker is telling that he has looked upon these brilliant creatures. The brilliant creatures refer to the swans. And now my heart is sore. Here you will see, as I have mentioned, the present and the past are contrasted here. He is reminded of the difference between the present and the past situation. And now my heart is sore. He has now an aching heart. All's changed since I, hearing at twilight the first time on this shore. So the change, the speaker is noticing the change in the 19 years. That is, he has now visited this place. And in these 19 years, his heart is sore finally. In this last year, his heart is sore. You will see that in this line, Yeats is trying to convey through the speaker that Ireland, because he was an Irish poet, Ireland is changing around him. The sentence structure suggests the previously known land as deserting him. The traditional known Ireland was deserting him, as the personal pronoun I comes after the changing process considered in All's changed. The bell beat, the heavy clapping or the beating of their wings. In the second stanza, we found the beating of the wings as clamorous of the swans. Here it is mentioned as bell beat. Above my head, trod with a lighter tread. So the poet or the speaker is telling that the bell beating of the swans as if is trying to mark the end of his life. His life is now nearing its end. Their wings refer to the wings of the swan. The swans, when they appear in groups as a collective pronoun, as a collective noun, you will see that it is called the game of swans when they are on the ground or they are swimming, and they are called the wedge of swans when they are flying or when they are in the air. So these are the two collective pronouns that you come to know from this poem also. So what is the poet or the speaker telling? That his life and age experiences have made him metaphorically heavier now. The poet or the speaker that he was 19 years back, he is now no more the same. As I have also already mentioned, that his life and age experiences have made him metaphorically heavier. Not only the speaker, in the last line of this stanza, not only the speaker but also the swans used to move or trod lightly, because the swans that he witnessed 19 years back may not be the same swans that he is witnessing or noticing now. The probable hint at the tender age of the swans and the speaker as contrasted to the old age. Here you will also notice that there is a shift in tone. The shift in tone was noticed in the second stanza. It is again noticeable in this third stanza. The speaker's thoughts here turn inward. The contrast is illustrated very clearly between the present and the past, between the old age and the young age. And this stanza echoes the pain in Yeats's heart caused due to the Easter uprisings. There was a huge amount of bloodshed and many people died. So that is also another source of his sore heart, apart from the continuous rejection by his beloved Maud Gonne. Okay, so the risings of 1916 that Yeats mentioned here also refers to the poet reflecting on his peaceful Ireland before the chaos broke out. So this is something that becomes quite unacceptable to the poet or the speaker. Unwedded still, lover by lover, they paddle in the cold, companionable streams or climb the air. Their hearts have not grown old. Passion or conquest, wander where they will, attend upon them still. Unwedded still, lover by lover. So the speaker is telling that the swans are not bored, they are not tired, their heart is not old. Lover by lover, it refers to the swans, that they are the symbol of love. The swans are the symbol of love, and as they unite as couple, they remain so forever. Once they unite as couple, they remain so forever without any detachment. And yet through the speaker resents this as he compares this to his relationship with Maud Gonne. Unlike the swans, he is not united with his lover, and there is a tone or a feeling of resentment as expressed in these words, lover by lover. They paddle in the cold means they are swimming in the lake. In spite of it being cold, they are swimming together. So even though the atmosphere is not conducive to express happiness, yet they are together, unlike the present situation when the poet or the speaker is lonely. Companionable streams or climb the air, their hearts have not grown old, passion or conquest, wander where they will, attend upon them still. So the companionable streams means moving in the streams together or flying into the sky. Their hearts have not grown old. So there are two references to these lines, as you see that I have mentioned here. One is the reference to the nationalistic heroes dying young in the uprising, the Easter risings, and another is the reference to the poet aging. So their hearts have not grown old. The young men who died in the battle, they were not old, they were quite young, and that pains the poet or the speaker. And another reference is the poet aging, as you will find that in the first two stanzas and in the third, fourth and final stanzas also, there is a constant reminder to the poet, and through the speaker, the poet also reminds us, the readers, that age is something that is not in our hands, we cannot control it, and one day or the other we are bound to lose our youth, lose our life to give space for the generation to come. Passion or conquest, wander where they will, attend upon them still. So the poet, through the speaker, links the myth of Leda and Swan, and the Swan and Zeus's mysterious reasons for doing so. So if you want to know more about the speaker and the speaker's linking to the myth of Leda and the Swan and Zeus's mysterious doings behind it, please let me know in the comment section so that I can elaborate more on this part. But let's move on to the next line. You see that passion and conquest, these two words, the poet has used together, and these two are the two opposing forces that has been used together to highlight the tension. Attend upon them still. So the speaker is telling that no matter what happens, the passions of the swans has not died, and they, once together, are still together. They attend upon each other, they give company to each other no matter what happens. You see that in the last two lines of this stanza 4, the two opposing forces of passion and conquest are seen by Yeats as comprising the eternal creative force that he sees within the swans. While passion is a chase, it is a following, conquest is its achievement, its conclusion, that it marks the conclusion. It is the achievement that marks the conclusion. Okay, so I hope you must have understood this part. You can note the meanings and the words that I have tried to explain through these two stanzas. Another thing that I would like to refer here, and you must also notice, is that the words passion and conquest as used in the poem, together they make up for the numerous contrasts that have been referred to, sometimes explicitly, sometimes as an understatement, like life and death, youth and old age, mortality and immortality, and so on. And these, you will find that these contrasts are necessary as much in real life as much as here in the poem also, because these contrasts mark the necessary these contrasts are necessary for progress and growth. It is a necessity that absolutely no one can avoid. The figure of speech that is used here is in the third stanza. One is the bell beat, that is an alliteration. The clamorous wings in the second stanza marks the figure of speech onomatopoeia. Here it is the bell beat again can be used as also an onomatopoeia, because it marks the sound, the type of sound that is created by the flying of the bird, the swan. Now it is time for us to move to the final stanza of the poem, that is also very important and remarkable, and it is like the final nail to the coffin. Let's read it together. But now they drift on the still water, mysterious, beautiful. Among what rushes will they build? By what lake's edges or pool? Delight men's eyes when I awake some day to find they have flown away. But now they drift. They here refers to the swan. Drift means moving away, and here it moving away, but here in the poem it suggests return. But now they drift on the still water. It suggests that you will see that I have marked as two meanings, A and B. The first meaning is that the return of the swans suggests that his traditional island, Yeats's traditional island, has not quite ended, and there is hope. There is a suggestion of hope that things can be renewed once again. And another is the second meaning that may be noted for the fact that the drifting of the swans in still water suggests the lack of movement. The two contrasting ideas as one of the predominant themes in the poem, as is very clear in this line also. Mysterious, beautiful. Mysterious suggests something that is enigmatic, something that is not very clear. Beautiful. This exhibits the poet, as he is expressing through the speakers, burning desire to find the permanence in temporality. It suggests his desire to find permanence in temporality, because permanence is something that is eternal, something that will stay, and temporality, even though it is mysterious, even though it is beautiful, it may not remain for long. Among what rushes will they build? By what lake's edge or pool? Delight men's eyes when I awake some day to find they have flown away. So the speaker wonders, what other lakes or shores will host the swan's lakes? Host the swan's nest, because today they may be swimming in this lake, today they may have built their nests here, but the next day they might build the nest somewhere else. And he wonders that what will be those lakes, what will be the kind of people that these swans will try to inspire, or will they at all be able to inspire, like he has been able to philosophize, like he has been able to dip into nostalgia. Will the swans be able to do the or mark the changes that they have been successful in doing it to him? He is at wonder. By what lake's edge or pool? He begins to ask that, looking at what will delight his eyes, as he believes that, as he is confused, that when he wakes up one day, as he is aging, he is slowly nearing death. One day the birds might not be there, one day he himself might not be there to witness the flight of the birds. Then what will happen? Then what will be his reaction? Then how will he delight his eyes? Yet realizes that life is valueless without Maud Gonne and his beloved Ireland. His poetry and life will forever be meaningless without his greatest loves. He loved his native land, he loved Maud Gonne, but if they change forever, then everything turns out to be meaningless. To find they have flown away, they refers here again to the swan. This question mark is very important because it represents the poet's overall confusion, as it is a rhetorical question. He knows that there will nothing be as delightful as the flight of the swans, or the swimming of the swans, or him counting the number of the 59 swans that are swimming in the lake. He feels that how can he live when he has lost so much? The change in nature along with his change in age is something that he finds it very unacceptable. In the final lines of the poem, the narrator or the speaker expresses his loss of the touch with the beauty of youth as an understatement. It also implies his acquisition of a sense of peace that eluded him in the rest of the poem. Life is short and ephemeral, it is temporal, it is something that is not permanent, but connected to something much greater and fundamentally eternal. This is something that everyone should note, that human life is marked or remembered through the creativity. And then I will move on to some of the critical appreciation and critical notes, as you will find here, that this is a lyric poem. While The Wild Swans at Coole is a lyric poem, though there is a shift in the tone as the poem progresses, through each stanza, the predominant tone is that of depression and pessimism. Yeats uses the swans as a metaphor for eternal beauty, and he sees in nature love and imagination, while everything else around him seems to be dying and aging. The swans remain unchanged. When the swans fly to the sky, they establish their independence. If you note in the fourth stanza that when they fly to the sky, they establish their independence. And Yeats recognizes that he must lose his present hold over passion and conquest, and the swans will delight men, as we find that the fourth stanza linking into the fifth stanza, that the swans will continue to delight men even if they come to reside in other lakes. As they fly, as if into the future, making an imaginary flight into the future, but excluding the speaker, he, on the other hand, transcends his own nostalgia. He moves down to his own nostalgia and despair that marks the end to the poem on a very melancholic note. You will find that the figure of speech that is predominant is irony. The contrast of the swans versus the poet, it is an irony. They are full of life, the swans are full of life, whereas the poet is in the twilight of his life. If anything is there like the protagonist or the antagonist, then the protagonist is the speaker, and the antagonist, if any, would be the forces of time and their inevitable conquest of mortal men. The autumn or the twilight that has been referred to or mentioned explicitly as well as an understatement, it represents the synecdoche. Synecdoche is the part representing the whole. Here, autumn and twilight as a part represents the larger picture, that of the life. The autumn demonstrates how he is considering the end of his life, as echoed in another of his poems, The Cold Heaven. And now I am going to discuss the numerous contradictory themes that have been used in the poem. One of the prominent themes that has been used in the poem is the death and the passage of time. The speaker's gloomy mood in the poem stems from his realization that so much has changed since he began counting the swans at this lake 19 years earlier. Another theme is the nature. The wild swans at Cool juxtaposes its speaker who is aging and who has lost much of his former energy with nature, which is eternally suspended in time, constantly dying and rebuilding itself again and again. The third theme is that of loss. The collection of the poems for which this poem provided the title was Lady Gregory's Son. Lady Gregory was Yeats's dear friend, and she owned the lake at Cool. So this sense of loss, accompanied with his loss of Maud Gonne, his rejection of Maud Gonne's proposal, hints at the loss of love and the loss of the near and dear ones that is echoed throughout the poem. Another theme is self-discovery. The wild swans at Cool invoke fantasies of self-discovery and self-actualization, because the speaker departs from society, walks into a serene landscape to meditate on his life, to meditate into the quiet space where he can look back upon himself without being distracted or influenced by something. Loneliness and melancholy is another predominant theme in the poem. It is mostly a tale of solitary wanderer who is caught up in his memories, and it trembles with loneliness at every turn. Eternity, immortality through creativity are the other two prominent themes in the poem that make this poem, The Wild Swans at Cool, one of Yeats's remarkable poem. I hope you will like this video. If you have any confusion, you are free to write in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe at the end of this watching this video, and do stay tuned for further updates. Thank you for watching.